In 1910, black farmers in America owned 16 million acres of land. 16 million. 45 years after slavery ended, with no inheritance, no capital, no protection, and no help, formerly enslaved people and their children had built one of the most extraordinary land empires in American history. 925,000 black-owned farms. 14% of every farmer in the United States was black. That land was the foundation of black wealth in this country. It was collateral. It was food. It was independence. It was a thing that could be passed to a child so that child would never have to work another man's field. Today, that number is under 5 million acres, and by some counts, closer to 2. Between 11 and 14 million acres gone. And here's what I need you to understand before we go any further. That land was not sold, it was not abandoned, it was not lost because black farmers were bad at farming. It was taken through paperwork, through loan offices, through courthouses and county supervisors and a federal agency that the United States government itself admitted was doing it. In today's dollars, the wealth stolen is conservatively estimated at $326 billion. Some estimates run higher. And by the end of this video, you're going to know exactly how it was done, who did it, and why almost none of it was ever returned. Before we go deeper, this is one of the crimes I documented in my book, 150 Crimes Against Black America. The land theft, the massacres, the medical experiments, the stolen wages and the stolen children. 150 documented crimes, every one of them sourced, including dozens I will never be able to cover on this channel. If this video makes your blood boil, that book will hand you the entire record. The link is in the description and the pinned comment. Get your copy today because they are not teaching this anywhere else. Let's start with how the land was won in the first place, because that context is what makes the theft unbearable. When slavery ended, the federal government briefly promised freed people land. Sherman's Field Order 15, the famous 40 acres. Andrew Johnson killed it within months and handed the land back to Confederates. So black families started with nothing, and they still built. They sharecropped, they saved, they bought parcels nobody wanted, they cleared swampland and rocky ground and made it produce. Between 1875 and 1910, black land ownership climbed from around 3 million acres to 16 million. During Jim Crow, during lynching, during the absolute worst conditions any group in this country has ever farmed under. That's not luck. That's one of the most remarkable economic achievements in American history, and it terrified people. Because land is not just property, land is power. A black farmer who owns his acres cannot be fired for registering to vote. He cannot be evicted for sending his children to the wrong school. He cannot be starved into silence. Historians of the civil rights movement have documented this directly. Independent black landowners were the backbone of the movement because they were the only ones who could afford to say no. They housed organizers, they fed marchers, they put up bail, they signed petitions when sharecroppers couldn't. Take the land and you take the leverage. So how do you take 16 million acres from people who legally own it? You don't do it with mobs. Mobs leave evidence. You do it with a government agency. The United States Department of Agriculture, and specifically its local county committees, controlled the lifeblood of American farming, operating loans to buy seed and fertilizer in the spring, disaster relief when the crop failed, ownership loans to expand, and here's a design flaw that became a weapon. Those decisions were made by local county committees, elected by local farmers in counties where black farmers couldn't vote. The men deciding whether a black farmer got his loan were the same white neighbors who wanted his land. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's the structure written into the system. And the way it worked was brutally simple. Farming runs on timing. You borrow in the spring, you plant, you harvest in the fall, you repay. As one of the original Pigford litigants put it, if you do not get your money on time, you are not going to be successful. So the county office would not always deny the black farmer outright. Sometimes they would just delay him, approve his loan in July instead of March after planting season was over. He misses the season. He cannot repay. Now he is in default. Now the USDA, the same agency that caused the default, forecloses on his land, and the land goes up for sale, often bought by the very neighbors sitting on that county committee. The federal government functioned as a collection arm of a land grab, and it did it with forms and deadlines instead of hoods and ropes. In Elbert County, Georgia, in the 50s and 60s, a single Farmers Home Administration supervisor has been documented steering the process against black farmers in exactly this way. And what happened in Elbert County was happening in hundreds of counties across the South. Then there's the second weapon, and this one is still taking land today. It's called heirs property. Because black farmers in the Jim Crow South often couldn't get a lawyer, couldn't trust the courthouse, and had good reason to fear that a recorded will invited attention, many died without one. Under the law, when a landowner dies without a will, the property passes to all the heirs collectively as tenants in common. Every child, then every grandchild. After 3 generations, a single farm might have 60 or 80 legal co-owners scattered across 4 states. And here's the trap. Under the law, any single one of those co-owners can force the sale of the entire property. So a speculator finds one distant cousin in Chicago who owns a 2% share, buys it for a few $1,000s, then walks into court and demands a partition sale of the whole farm. The court orders an auction. The family, often outbid, often not even notified in time, loses land they've held since Reconstruction to a stranger, legally. Researchers have identified heirs property as one of the leading causes of involuntary black land loss in the American South. Not a loophole, a machine. That's just one of the mechanisms, and it's one of 150 crimes in my book. The link's in the description whenever you're ready. Now here's where it stops being history and starts being an active crime scene. In 1997, a black farmer from North Carolina named Timothy Pigford sued the United States Department of Agriculture. He and others alleged a systematic pattern of discrimination in loans and assistance. And in 1999, the court agreed. The judge in that case laid out the numbers plainly. By 1910, African American farmers owned or worked 16 million acres with 925,000 farms. And by the time of the ruling, there were fewer than 18,000 African American farms left, and they owned less than 3 million acres. The court found that the USDA's discriminatory policies bore much of the responsibility for that dispossession. Let that land. A federal court ruled that the United States government helped destroy black farming in America. The department itself later described the role of its practices in that decline as, in its own words, well documented. Pigford versus Glickman became the largest civil rights settlement in American history, and it was a disaster. The USDA initially estimated maybe 2,000 farmers would file. Over 22,000 filed in the first round, and eventually more than 85,000 claims were submitted, of which roughly 18,000 succeeded through the claims process. The standard payout was $50,000. Think about that number against the loss. $50,000 for a farm that had been in a family for 4 generations, for hundreds of acres, for a lifetime of stolen income, and the entire inheritance of your children. And even that was out of reach for most. The filing deadlines and the 2-track payment system were so complicated that thousands of eligible farmers were disqualified on technicalities or never got a dime. One farmer whose family had worked the same North Carolina land since 1912 said it as plainly as it can be said, "We didn't receive a dime." Most others he knew didn't either, and it got worse. After the consent decree, the USDA kept foreclosing on black farmers' land. The Justice Department, under 2 different administrations, one Republican and one Democrat, spent millions of dollars fighting claims and denying payouts from the very settlement the government had already agreed to. A second settlement, Pigford 2, came in 2010 with another $1.25 billion, still a fraction of the loss. And when debt relief for farmers of color was finally passed in 2021, it was immediately tied up in lawsuits and eventually rewritten. 25 years after a federal court confirmed the theft, the descendants of those farmers are still waiting. So let's put the arithmetic on the table one more time, because the arithmetic is the argument. 16 million acres in 1910, under 5 million today and falling. Black farmers lost roughly 90% of their land over the same period in which white farmers lost about 2%, 90 versus 2. That is not markets. That is not mechanization. That is not urbanization or bad luck or farming is hard for everybody. Every farmer in America faced mechanization. Every farmer faced consolidation. Only one group lost nearly everything, and only one group was systematically denied the loans that would have let them survive it. As of the most recent agricultural census, there were about 35,000 Black-owned farms left, 1.7% of all farms, in a country where Black people are 13% of the population. And the wealth that vanished, $326 billion by conservative estimate, is a foundational part of the racial wealth gap that America still argues about. Like the cause is a mystery. It isn't a mystery. It's a paper trail. 14 million acres, 4 generations of inheritance, $326 billion. Taken by loan officers who ran out the clock, by county committees stacked with the men who wanted the land, by speculators who bought one cousin's share to force a courthouse auction, and by a federal agency that a federal court ruled was responsible. That is one crime. And there are 149 more in my book. 150 crimes against Black America, the massacres nobody named, the experiments the government ran on its own citizens, the wealth taken and never returned, every single one documented and sourced. If you have ever had someone look you in the face and tell you to get over the past, this book is the receipt collection that ends that conversation permanently. The link is in the description and the pinned comment. Get your copy today, because this history does not survive by accident. It survives because we carry it. Share this video with somebody who thinks Black families just never built anything. Show them the 16 million acres. Subscribe to Black Journals for the history they buried. Hit the like button so this reaches the people who need it, and drop a comment and tell me, did your family ever own land that disappeared? I want to hear those stories, because that's how we prove this wasn't rare. Thank you for watching. Thank you for refusing to look away, and I'll see you in the next one.